Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Richard Skipper Celebrates. This is the show in which I celebrate artists and their body of work and worth. And I hope tonight that I find all of you in a good mood, all things considered, in this crazy world that we find ourselves in. Today marks 226 days since our theaters shut down. But as I keep saying, thank God we have the internet, and thank God we have each other. As I've said many times at the beginning of my show, it's very easy for me to celebrate artists because I love this business. I love being on both sides of the footlights, and I also love it even more when I get the opportunity to celebrate my friends and hopefully learn something new about them that I didn't know. And hopefully everyone who's watching tonight will also learn something about the artist that I am bringing to tonight. And our guest tonight is a true artist. Now, I'm going to bring him on screen, but I'm going to continue to talk about him for a moment. There are certain people in life, and you feel like they've always been there. Geoffrey Mark is truly one of those people. And some people you can go, when did I meet them? How did I meet them? What were the circumstances that brought us together? And if they're true friends, sometimes you can't figure that out. But I know the exact day and place, everything in which I met Geoffrey for the first time. It was on January 25th, 2006. And I had gotten a call from Don Schaefer. Some of our friends know Don Schaefer, that they wanted to do an evening celebrating Ethel Merman based on Geoffrey Mark's new book, Ethel Merman, the biggest star on Broadway. So when I was given the call, originally what they wanted to do was just a celebration of Ethel Merman impersonators. But I thought that she deserved, and with all due respect to all the Ethel Merman impersonators out there, I thought that she deserved something a little bit bigger and better than that. After all, she was and still is Broadway's biggest star. So I thought, why not have a celebration of her life and career? I opened the show. Geoffrey, of course, was there that night. We were there to sell books, and I'm happy to say we sold a lot of books that night. Leroy Reams was part of the show. Dodie Goodman was part of the show. Tony Quantro, Katie Thorpe did come in and perform as Ethel Merman, doing her famous jingle celebrating the zip code, which came out in 1961, the year I was born. So, Geoffrey, I am so thrilled that you're here tonight. And before we delve into the many layers of your life and career, I want to ask how you are truly doing in the midst of this crazy world that we find ourselves in right now.
It's a good question, Richard, and I'm so happy to see you.
And this is the first to see you.
This is the first chance I've had to put on any jewelry, so admire it quickly, please. La 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 la. It's a new life. And I had to, like many of us had to, sort of rebuild a brand new structure for myself. I knew that if I just sort of sat here frightened, I'd wither away. Mm-hmm. Instead of doing that, I wrote my memoirs, which are coming out next year.
Oh, good, good.
I am doing a new version of my Lucy book. Of course, it's on me now to do all the cooking and cleaning and shopping and all the domestic.
And if anyone out there says Lucy who, you can shut off the show right now.
Yeah, pretty much. If you don't know, I'm referring to Miss Ball, where that Merman means Ethel Merman or Carol means Carol Channing. Then yeah, this probably isn't the show for you, and leave room for the other people to come in a little closer.
Well, so, I can honestly say you and I are two very lucky men. And I
Yes, ma'am.
say this with the fact that these people that we mentioned, some of them more than others, have became friends in our lives, and were very much a part of that. But I want to go back
Sure.
to the beginning. You're originally from Maryland, am I correct?
Well, half and half. I was
Okay.
born in Brooklyn, New York, and I spent from 5th grade through whatever part of high school I went to in a little town called Randallstown, right outside of Baltimore.
Okay.
And I attended a little bit of elementary school there, Woodmore Elementary, Old Court Junior High School. Remember when they had junior high schools? And Randallstown High School.
They don't have junior high schools anymore?
They're called middle schools now.
Okay. Well, they were junior high. That's how long it's been since I was there. It was junior high school.
And that junior high school, I believe, is a military academy now. So, and that's where the show business started, and that's where my romantic life started. So it was, you talked about being lucky. Anybody who asks me, I think I'm the luckiest son of a gun on the planet. Because I don't think I'm telling tales out of school. And of course, this will all be in my book, that my childhood was kind of rough. My father was an alcoholic. My mother kind of spent her time on him, taking care of him and protecting herself from him. So I was not a very happy camper. And
well, I want to interrupt you for a moment, not to take away from your story. I had a similar situation with my own father and mother. But for me, I totally immersed myself in the world of show business. I don't know how old you are. As far as I'm concerned, you're ageless. But I came along at a time where I grew up in the 1960s and 70s sitcom world and the world of the television variety show.
L'chaim, everyone.
L'chaim. That was the world that I wanted to be a part of. So growing up in that environment, did you also escape into the world of show business, or what we perceive show business to be?
Yes. This is going to sound like I'm puffing myself up. I'm just telling you the truth. I remember being 9 months old, and I have spotty memories till I'm about a year and a half. I remember everything since then. As a little child, around the time you were born, on Monday nights, CBS had To Tell the Truth, I've Got a Secret, and then eventually the Lucy Show. It's the only time of the week that we as a family, my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandmother, we were 4 generations in one house, sat and watched TV together. My grandmother felt that had her life choices been different, she would have been Kitty Carlisle. She felt Miss Carlisle was the epitome of what a great lady should be. Beauty, poise, charm, ambition, talent, hard work, and fashion. And she used her to teach me good manners and don't let people get your goat. I was tiny. And like many mothers and daughters, my mother and my grandmother, didn't get along so well. They argued. And one specific evening, Mom, what does he need with Kitty Carlisle? He's 3 years old. And my grandmother pointed her finger at my mother and she said, you don't even know what's in your son. These are the people he's going to be with when he grows up. He needs to learn this stuff now so he can be with them later. She said, you're a fool. One of these days, he's going to be sitting in Kitty Carlisle's living room, telling her what you just said and laughing at you. 4 decades later, I was in Kitty Carlisle's living room the very week I met you, because she wanted a copy of the Ethel Merman book brought to her personally. I got to sit while she took a voice lesson, and I told her what my grandmother had said. My grandmother had passed by that point, and Mrs. Hart, which is all I have ever called her, Mrs. Hart, was in her 90s. No one was crying. Both of us, no one was laughing. We both cried. I couldn't have made that happen. It wasn't like I sat through my whole life, I've got to find a way to get to Kitty Carlisle. It was one of those God shots where it's like, you know what? If I've accomplished nothing else in my career, this has made me very happy for her, because my grandmother was my biggest supporter.
Years ago, I was invited to a party at I think KT Sullivan. Yeah, so I was invited to a New Year's Day party at KT Sullivan's, and for those of you who have been to KT's, I mean, it's show business royalty. Everyone's there, but as I was coming in, Katie Carlisle was leaving, but somehow a group of people came in. And Katie had a walk-in closet just as you walked in. And I got pushed into the walk-in closet with Miss Hart, and the door shut behind us. And the two of us were locked in the closet together. And we laughed. And I said, the only thing missing right now are the Marx Brothers. So, you bring these memories back. But you brought up something I love the fact that you said that you grew up in a multi-generational family. Yes. And for a lot of people who may be younger, who may be watching the show tonight or later, we grew up at a time in which the stars of our generation were seen on shows with those from our parents' generation and our grandparents' generation in the days when there were only 3 networks. So we came up with this greater appreciation of who these people were because we were exposed to them. Now, when a friend of mine just jokingly wrote, you were in the closet only once and with Kitty Carlisle. So there you have it, Brent. But you, when you were in school, and the other kids were probably listening to the most contemporary, were you still a throwback to another generation? What music were you listening to when you were in school?
My parents, well, I shouldn't say my parents. My grandmother always made sure that I had my own little Victrola to play records on. Records made for children, records made for adults. The first star I bought for myself, or I made my mother buy for me, the first record where I said, I must have this now, was the soundtrack to Mary Poppins, which I played I went through 4 of them, scratching the needle, playing them. And of course, another one of those circles in my life, finding myself at brunch with Julie Andrews and Blake Edwards at the Friars Club many years later and going, this isn't happening. I had that face in front of me, and now the face is in front of me, and she's a real person. And by the way, one of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet. After that, the next big thing, because the Beatles came along and all the kids were listening to the Beatles. In New York City, there were radio stations like WMCA, that were playing the rock and roll or the rock music, the British invasion, the Motown sounds. I appreciated all of those things. I enjoyed them, but I didn't buy them. At home, the next big album was the 1966 revival of Annie Get Your Gun with Ethel Merman. And I heard that album and I thought, that is perfection. I'd already seen Miss Merman because of my grandmother. When Judy Garland had her series, my grandmother would find excuses to let me stay up, to watch, to learn. And I saw Miss Merman with Judy Garland, and then I saw Miss Merman with Lucille Ball on the Lucy Show. And I just felt, this is the most talented human being I've ever seen. What she does seems to come out of thin air with no effort, and it's perfect. I felt the same way about watching Ella Fitzgerald sing. Now, of course, being the mature person that I am now, I know how much hard work went into these people performing like this well on this level. But as a little boy watching, I just saw perfection that seemed effortless and seamless, and I loved it. After that, as I got a little bit older and I had some money of my own, I could buy things. I got into some pop music. The Carpenters were a big influence on me. I listened to everybody who was good. I found there was something to be learned from anybody who was really good at what they did. Even if later on I found out that the people themselves weren't very nice. I think Tom Jones is one of the greatest showmen who ever lived. And I have been backstage with Tom Jones, and I have nothing nice to say about him. But I'd smile to see him perform. I just wouldn't cross the street to shake his hand. He was very homophobically rude with me.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, that's his wagon. I was backstage at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas with Frida Payne. Frida and I were in the audience. It was Tom's last show, and Frida was about to open with the Four Tops at the MGM Grand. And it's the custom, or at least it used to be the custom, that the headliner introduces the next headliner from the audience. So he introduced Frida and me sitting there. And we had to go backstage and say hello and say thank you. So I got to see Tom with his little retinue getting undressed, which I will be kind and say was not very impressive. But he began to hit on Frida so badly. And Frida dug her nails into my arm because she said on the way in, under no circumstances, leave me alone with this man.
Mm.
And I tried to engage him with conversation to get him away from how much he wanted to shag her. It was very subtle. Not. And I had about all of the, why don't you get rid of this little fruit and play with me dialogue out of him.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said to him, you know, a relative of mine knows you very well. And that got his attention. My mother has a cousin, or had a cousin, named Beverly Harrell, who was a professional sex worker and a madam. She owned the Cottontail Ranch outside of Las Vegas in Nevada. She was the one who ran for Congress and got all that publicity and wrote the book, A Clean House. And I said, Tom, I have pictures of you there in action. We were out of that dressing room in 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And Frida said, how did you make that up? I said, Frida, it's not made up. I don't have the pictures. My aunt has them, but they exist. And we got out in a hurry because he knows they exist. You can't make up stories like this. I know we've gone far afield from what you were asking, but
well, I want to go back to, I mean, when you were a kid, did you have aspirations to be, and I know that you are an entertainer and you are going to grace us with a song before we finish the show tonight. But did you have aspirations? You've already mentioned Lucy and Ethel and not that Ethel, the other Ethel.
Marmon.
Lucy and Ethel and Ella Fitzgerald. You've written incredible books about all of them. But did you want to write about those when you were growing up, or did that come later?
That came with sobriety. It was my opinion that I wanted to sing and dance and be funny. I was on the stage the first time at 4 years old at a day camp. They put a beret on me, penciled in a mustache with eyebrow pencil, and I sang Dites-moi. Dites-moi was the first song I ever sang on a stage. That was it. I knew that was it. I knew it then. When I was 7 and 8, we lived briefly in Los Angeles. I was talent scouted so much. The Art Linkletter show wanted me on as one of the kids. Desi Lou came and wanted to sign me to a contract. For what show, I don't know, but it was to be just under contract to them to be available to be on programs. And Danny Kaye wanted me to come sing Let There Be Peace on Earth on his Christmas show because I had sung it at school and talent scouts used to come. I went to school with Lisa Loring from the Addams Family because she was there. And Patty Peterson from the Donna Reed show was in the Catholic school next door.
In Baltimore or outside of Baltimore?
So this is in Los Angeles.
Okay.
We were in Los Angeles briefly in the mid-'60s.
Okay.
And my parents wouldn't allow any of it. After that, I was marking time until Randallstown High School. And you can't, again, make up the next sequence of events that all happen in 1 week.
Mm-hmm.
I went to my first day of high school. I am 11 or 12 days short of my 14th birthday. So I'm still 13. I've just had my bar mitzvah. I'm Jewish. And it was a brand new high school in those days. And they built a theater onto the high school. Not an auditorium, but a real theater with a orchestra pit and catwalks with lights and dressing rooms backstage and a cyclorama on the stage. And I found myself enrolled in a musical theater class. I never heard of that. I've never heard of it since. The man who taught the class, his name was John Nickus. We lost him to the AIDS virus.
I'm sorry.
He was a gay man who looked like Ted Baxter from the Mary Tyler Moore Show. He was in his early 50s, very handsome. Didn't care who knew he was gay because he was fully vested in his pension and just like, too bad, folks. He was pairing us up in twos to work on a musical comedy song. And he put me with this boy. And I walked over to the boy, and I realized he was sizing me up as I walked over to him. He was older. He was 17, almost 18. And he'd been in show business since he was 4. He had a stage mother and a father like mine. And as I came closer to him, he took a step up on the risers behind him to be taller than I, so he could sort of look down on me. And I looked at him, and we started to talk, and 3 things became abundantly clear. I was going into show business. I was gay, because I didn't know. And that I was going to be in love with him for the rest of my life. 2 days later in the same class, I met a girl named Phyllis Limpert, who is my sister. She is still my sister. I picked out her husband for her. I am the godfather to her sons. And Joel and I were together for 47 years.
Wow. Wow.
Never under the same roof, because he couldn't deal with being publicly known for what he was. So instead, he married wealthy women and lived his life that way. I was the secret. And he produced for us a beautiful daughter, a handsome son. I have 2 grandchildren. And my daughter and my grandsons live about 10 minutes up the road. My son lives in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. That week changed everything in my life. 2 years later, I was working in professional show business. At 15, at 16, I was doing Little Abner. At 16, I made my first film. At 17, I was doing off-Broadway shows. At 18, I was at the Playboy Club. And then drugs and alcohol hit me. And it screwed me up.
I mean, was that something that happened because you were exposed to it at that time? Or was this something that you actively went after?
I think, from what I know about the disease of alcoholism, there are people who are problem drinkers, and then there are people who actually have the disease of alcoholism. My father's father had it. My father had it. His brother had it. One of my cousins has the gambling disease. I inherited it. If I would never have taken a drink, I wouldn't have known. But once I drank, once I smoked the first joint, once I did the first line of cocaine, the die was set. And I wasted at least 8 years of my life. The only thing I did in those 8 years in my 20s was to get drunk, get high, have sex when I couldn't be with Joel. And the one good thing I accomplished was Dr. Matilda Krim came to me. The president wouldn't help her, the governor wouldn't help her, the mayor wouldn't help her. Would I help her because she thought she had a treatment for HIV that could lengthen the lives of people who had it? And I began to perform, and I produced shows in New York City. I did marathon variety shows in Prospect Park. The money we gave her, she took to Elizabeth Taylor and started Amphar with. Today, Amphar has $1.6 billion help people with. When I met her, I had to buy her a cup of coffee because she didn't have the dollar to pay for it. So if I accomplished one thing in my 20s other than performing, I'm very proud of that. That and the gay advocacy I did, marching. My first gay pride march was in 1976. It was a parade. It wasn't banners. It wasn't costumes. It was serious people wanting to not lose their homes and being able to be fed in a restaurant or served in a hospital. And the march went from Christopher Street up Fifth Avenue to the Sheep Meadow in Central Park in New York City. Got to St. Patrick's Cathedral. There was a gang, and I'm sorry, my Catholic friends, I love you, but there was a gang of Catholics waiting for us. And we were stopped there. And they began to throw glass bottles and bricks and broken glass at us. And I was standing possibly in the middle of a wide bunch of folks. And someone called my name. And I turned my head. And if I hadn't turned my head, I could feel the wind of the brick against my face as it sailed me. That brick would have hit me squarely right here. I would have died. 3 people died that day. Dozens of us were in hospitals. So that's the other thing I was able to pull myself together enough to do, was to stand up for what I thought was right and help others who needed help. And then happily for me, I had a moment of clarity right after my 30th birthday and realized that I was in big trouble. That if I didn't help myself, I was going to die from this. And I didn't want to. I'd survived the HIV crisis. Somehow, I don't know how, I did not become HIV positive. Believe me, I did nothing special. Just luck of the draw. I was as promiscuous as anybody else was. You want to talk about John Lennon for half a second? In this time period, I was going from my Upper West Side apartment to visit Phyllis, who lived on 72nd Street, diagonally across from the Dakota. There was a wonderful restaurant in the lobby of her apartment building called Noodles. And it was very late at night. In those days, we went out dinner late. You know, dinner at midnight was nothing in those days. And I'm coming off the 8th Avenue subway, and I'm walking down 72nd Street on the Dakota side of the street. And just as I got to the arch, which used to be an open driveway, bang, bang, bang. I was right there when John Lennon got shot. I didn't see the bullets coming out of the gun. I turned my head and saw him lying on the floor with Mark over him. But I didn't know who it was. It was dark. It was close to midnight. It was 10:30. It was 11 o'clock at night. Only when I got to Phyllis's house and turned the television on did I realize that I was a witness to the murder. And I kept my mouth shut. I didn't want to get involved. It wouldn't have helped. It wouldn't have made any difference had I opened my mouth. Except maybe I would have had a book out of it. But enough people mourned for John Lennon that they didn't need my help to do that.
Well, I want to go back to, you mentioned that it was 8 years of your life that you were in this, for lack of a better term, rabbit hole. What was the deciding factor, and how were you able to pull your life back together from that?
You're going to have to, you yourself and all of you who are watching and listening, believe what I'm telling you is the truth, because you can't write this stuff. I ran into a man named John Topping. I won't tell you where I met him. It was not a nice place that I met him. And he felt that I had missed out by not doing hallucinogenics. I never did hallucinogenics because I thought, I'm already crazy. I don't need to push over the edge. He talked me into doing mushrooms. And I went to my drug dealer and I got mushrooms and brought them back to my house with him. And I heard a little voice. And the little voice said, don't do this. You're going to lose your mind. So I let him have my portion too. It seemed like about 10 minutes later, John said to me, Jeff, I don't feel so well. I better lie down. For the next 6 hours, this poor man, who is still my friend and is a wonderful guy.
Was he able to get help as well?
Well, let me tell you what happened. He lost his mind and he did not only not know where he was, he didn't know what he was. And after 6 hours of trying to calm him down, I will make a very long story short and tell you that he jumped off my balcony.
Oh my God.
Happily, luckily, I was only 1 floor up and he landed in some ivy. I had to call the police. I had to get an ambulance for him. He did not harm himself very much. Got the wind knocked out of him. But I knew the next guy over the balcony was going to be me in one form or another. That was my wake-up call. Jeff, is this how you want to end your life? And the answer was no, it's not how I want to end my life. So I went to an AA meeting that night and heard people saying things out loud that I'd only heard to myself. I will not praise or condone AA. It is not my business to talk about AA. I can tell you that it's worked for me. Won't describe or discuss it as an organization. It's not my business, and it's not your business. But I've been clean and sober now 31 and a half years.
God bless you for that. That's good.
Yeah, well, thanks to God for that. What AA did, Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, what AA did for me was help me plug back into Jeff, minus the childhood traumas. My father pretty much molested me my entire childhood, and so did other men. And my family were, other than my grandparents, very ashamed of my being gay, and took every opportunity to let me know how little they thought of me. So I was a very unhappy man with very little self-esteem. And I rebuilt it. I rebuilt my faith, my own personal spirituality. I've always been Jewish. I'll always continue to be Jewish, but my spiritual life brings in parts of almost every religion and ideology there is. I bring into my life what works, what makes sense, what feeds my soul. When I started doing that, it was like, oh my goodness, what happened to my career? All these years of not working, or working very little, for charities, doing songs to raise money.
Mm-hmm.
But my fear was, if I went back out there again, auditioning for parts in shows or movies or to sing in clubs, could I stand the rejection? There is a certain rejection to show business. Every one of us faces. The biggest stars get told no. So I thought, all right, well, what can I do in show business that doesn't require daily rejection? Well, if I write something, nobody rejects it till I'm finished.
Mm-hmm.
Went out and bought my first computer on DOS. There wasn't even Windows yet.
Oh my goodness.
With a monochrome monitor. And everyone made fun of me. You're wasting your money. You're wasting your time. Who do you think you are? Now, I want to tell everybody watching, when people say to you, who do you think that you are? That is a reflection of their insecurities, not you.
Mm-hmm.
Because I finished the book and I sold the book.
Now, was this the Lucy book?
No, that was the first of the 2 Ella Fitzgerald books I've written.
Okay.
The book was an enormous hit, leading to a Grammy nomination and a whole lot of other work, and gave me the gravitas to slowly get back into all the parts of my show business life. You know, one of the best pieces of advice I was ever given about my career was from somebody who didn't like me. Bob Schiller was one of the original I Love Lucy writers, and he wrote for All in the Family and Maude. The man was brilliant. We were very close friends. And I was at a Democratic Party fundraising dinner with him and his wife. And his wife said, come for a walk with me. Now, I knew she did not like me, but she said, Jeff, you've got to learn to change your hats. You've got to learn to reinvent yourself over and over and over again to stay viable in show business. Best advice I was ever given. So I am an actor. I am a jazz singer. I am a Broadway standards singer. I used to be a dancer. I'm a little too old for that now. I am a writer for television. I'm a producer for television. I'm a director for television. I'm an author of books. I'm an award-winning bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, there's never really any downtime for me. I'm always working on something. There's always something creative to fulfill me. And if I'm well thought of, it's a combination of God-given talent for which I have no right to take a bow. You know, people who are born tall, Mr. Skipper, or with great hair, Mr. Skipper, or anything else like that, it's a gift. We don't earn it. But maybe I can take a bow for being very hardworking. I mean, really hardworking,
Mm-hmm.
disciplined, and taking the talents I was given and doing the best I could with them. Really being a good shepherd of what I had been given. And it's worked. And it's worked in my personal life. Joel died 2 years ago almost now from lung cancer.
Mm-hmm.
How many people do you know at the age of 13, almost 14, had a career handed to them and their soulmate handed to them in 3 seconds?
Mm.
And as you said at the top of the show, look at the people who have not only been my friend, but who have mentored me, who have opened doors for me. Steve Allen, Milton Berle, Jan Murray, Lucille Ball, Lucy Arnaz, and Desi Arnaz Jr. have been wonderful to me. Carol Channing, our dear friend, was wonderful to me. You were closer than I, but even to me, she was wonderful. The list is so long of folks. My dear, dear friend, Jack Riley. Because of Jack, I ended up being a friar in Beverly Hills, being part of the Army's Army Comedy Group. I've been lucky enough to meet people who recognized the talent and saw how seriously I took my work, not how I took myself, how I took my work, and how hard I was working, and that I was open to learning from them. You know, I hear from people all the time, nobody helps me. Well, have they tried to help you and you didn't listen? I listened. If they said this, not that, I went, okay, I'll try that. And it works. And it's made for, you know, I'm in show business now 48 years.
And you're a survivor. You're a survivor. Before we, get to the end of our show and lose time, I really want to focus on your 3 books that you've written. The 3 books that I'm very familiar with. 4 books. But let's go. When you sit down, and it's a very time-consuming process to write a book. When you decide that you're going to write a book about these people that you've celebrated in your books, what is the deciding factor for you that you're going to, for example, write a book about Ethel Merman? What was it that you decided to devote your life to telling her story when there had been other books written about her as well?
And mine was very controversial because I told stories nobody told. The title of the book gives a clue. Nobody's ever asked me where I got the title from. Ethel Merman, the biggest star in Broadway. It comes from Miss Merman being on the Lucy show. The plot has Ethel Merman going to Danfield, which is the little town that Lucy and Viv lived in. And she's going to put on a show for the Cub Scouts. And she's living in their house with them. Of course she would. This is the conceit of the show. And hey, brilliantly done.
Very well.
And Lucy Carmichael is getting jealous of all the attention Merman's getting. And she says, Merman. Who does she think she is? The biggest star on Broadway? And Viv looks at her sardonically like only Vivian Vance could and said, she is. Ethel Merman, the biggest star on Broadway. I like to write about people who are the best at what they do. I think Ethel Merman, with all respect to Carol, who I adored, and Mary Martin, who I knew, and Chita Rivera, who I've gotten to know these ladies fairly well. Ethel was the best. It doesn't mean the others weren't absolutely wonderful, but if you have to pick one, she's the best. And my friend Howard Rogart now is saying, no, it's Mary. Yeah, Howard, I hear you. But Ethel Merman was the biggest one. Ella, there was no better jazz singer than Ella Fitzgerald. Lucille Ball was the best sitcom performer there ever was. I've written a cookbook different and apart from those things. I've written a second book about Ella that more delves into her personal life. I am now redoing the Lucy book, the new Lucy book. The original one was about all of her television work, from live TV till she died. This one, I'm adding in the radio shows, the films, Wildcat, all new interviews. Fran Drescher has written a new foreword for the book. Just these last couple of months, I've interviewed Carol Burnett and Rich Little and Anne Margaret. It's going to be wonderful. I don't want to write to make money. I have turned down all kinds of things. The money was good, but I had no passion for it. And these days, 20, 30 years ago, these kinds of books sold really, really well, and the advances were wonderful. These days, not that many people know who Ethel Merman is anymore, unfortunately. I'd love to write, I have the passion to write a wonderful biography of Dinah Shore. No one will buy it. No one will read it. It'll sell 6 copies. Not because Dinah wasn't wonderful, but because She didn't make very many movies. Her TV shows are not repeated. Young people don't know who she is.
Mm.
So along with my having a passion for writing about a subject, commercially, it has to be something that people will actually buy. So, I'm working on the Lucy book right now. I finished my memoir. It's called The Devil Was Born in Brooklyn.
Mm.
And half of show business is going to quietly commit suicide because I tell everything. And including the story about Freddie Mercury and me. I'm going to start next week working with adult film star Amber Lynn on her memoirs.
Mm.
After that, I don't know how many more books I have left in me that the public will buy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think after that, unless I write for television, I will probably, assuming the world opens up again, I'd rather be out there singing and telling jokes and making people laugh and entertaining folks.
Well, one of the things that you have managed to do, since you are a writer and you're also an entertainer, this happened, I know, especially with your Ella Fitzgerald book, and somewhat with your Ethel Merman book as well, that you have put shows built around these books on stage. So
Yes.
that's one method of being able to sell your books, and then signing books after the. Do you think that, like, I would be excited to read a book about Dinah Shore, but you don't think it would sell at all?
I have talked to publishers and mentioned her name, and they said, yeah, wonderful woman, no one will buy it. They will not publish books, or they don't want to publish books where only 3,000 people buy a copy.
Mm-hmm.
Books have become a lot more expensive to buy. There are a lot less places to publicize them. The bookstores are gone, except for Barnes & Noble. And right now, we can't even go into those.
And we may lose the Strand here in New York. That's
that breaks my heart. I bought so many.
It breaks my heart to see that. But I want to ask you, how did you end up in Palm Springs?
I had left Los Angeles because I thought my mother was ill. Actually, she wasn't. She just wanted to get me to Florida. Once I realized she was scamming me, I began working on cruise ships as an entertainer. And I was in 39 countries over the course of 3 years.
Wow.
Doing these shows and singing jazz and, playing the Easter Bunny, doing whatever they wanted. When the last big cruise I did across the ocean, I got ill with bronchitis. And my doctors said, you got COPD. Florida, New York, not good places for you to live. You can visit once in a while, but to live, find a desert. Well, why would I choose any other desert besides Palm Springs? Because it's near to Los Angeles. It's got gorgeous weather. And if one happens to be gay, it's probably one of the easiest places to be gay in the world. Palm Springs, San Francisco, New York, Tel Aviv, Paris. But none of the rest of those things are deserts, and Tel Aviv is too far away from show business. So I chose Palm Springs, and I'm missing Los Angeles. I'm missing my friends. I'd have more of a career and more of a social life if I was in LA. But Palm Springs affords me to live a little bit better and a little bit cleaner air.
Mm-hmm.
So here.
And do you commute? I mean,
Yes. The answer to your question is yes. As often as I needed to, I drove into Los Angeles and did publicity and performed. You do interviews, you do television, you do radio. These days, it's all being done like we're doing it right now through some sort of a platform, through your webcam or through your telephone. And those are fun too. I'm booked into December doing these things. I'm doing one on Monday, not competing with you, for performers with disabilities, to discuss that part of my life and hopefully inspire some young people.
Is that with David Zimmerman?
That's what David Zimmerman is. A wonderful man.
Love David Zimmerman.
I love him too. I'm enormously fond of David Zimmerman.
Well, great. Is that going to be a live broadcast? Because
we're recording it on Monday, and as soon as he's got it edited together, I'll let everybody know when to watch it and how to watch it. It'll be on multiple platforms.
I have to say, I mean, for myself, and maybe you think the same way as well, but, I get up each morning, I say my morning prayers and meditations, and I always say, Dear God, please help me to stay in my lane, keep my blinders on, and be the best Richard Skipper that I can possibly be today. And so
Yes.
all these other people that are doing whatever they're doing on their platforms, I don't think of any of them as competition. I love what they're doing. I watch as many of them as I can possibly watch. I try not to watch uh, if I know that someone's going to be doing my show. I try not to watch them prior because I don't want to be influenced by anything they talk about or say. But David Zimmerman is wonderful, and Billy Masters and Jim Masters, they're all out there.
Yeah, I've done all those shows. I do about 200 of these things a year.
That's wonderful. That's
well,
great.
I'm lucky. Again, I'm a lucky man. People seem to think that what I have to say is worth listening to, and the songs I have to sing are enjoyable, and hopefully once in a while I'm funny, not particularly today, but sometimes the interviews get a little silly and funny. I don't often get to be interviewed by somebody I know as well as you for as long as I know you, because we are folks, we are personal friends outside of being on the air together.
And the last time I saw you was when I was out in Palm Springs for Carol's memorial service.
Yes.
And we had dinner together, which was a wonderful evening, Danny, myself, and you. But you shared a story with me that night that I'd like you to share with everyone now about Carol Channing and your mom. Yes.
All right. So golly, about 6 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I don't remember. Carol was doing locally here in Palm Springs a benefit to start off. She wanted to bring the arts back into elementary schools. And she invited Brett, and she invited Kay Ballard and me. And she invited about a half a dozen celebrities to come and perform and be a presence. And I believe it was put on the internet. I never saw it because I was there. It was live, so I never saw the show. My mother, I don't want to make it sound like she's a monster. Make up your own minds. But very haughty. Nothing about my career has ever impressed her. The awards never impressed her. Meeting celebrities, so what? And I introduced her to Carol for the first time. And those of you who only know Carol as a performer, let me tell you something. She was enormously wise. If you had asked me one word describes Carol Channing, the one word is wise. She knew people. Because Carol Channing was a satirist. Mm-hmm. To do satire, you have to understand people to do it as well as she did it. Mm-hmm. And I introduced Carol to my mother, and my mother was next door to being rude. Not quite, but next door. Just to keep the conversation, I mentioned Carol's brilliant nightclub career that most people don't remember, that she had this brilliant satirical material written for her, that she performed for years in the best nightclubs in the country, in between Broadway shows. My mother was like, "Oh, did you do nightclubs?" Oh. And Carol turned to me and winked and turned to my mother and said, "Do you know Cecilia Sisson?" And my mother said, "Why would I know her?" I thought, here we go. Carol put her hands on my mother's face, got within 3 inches, nose to nose. Cecilia Sisson is a piece of wonderful material about a former silent film star who does not understand why she isn't working. And as she's telling you why, every S she has whistles. Mm-hmm. I can't do this. I only know 2 people in the world who can do this, Carol and her cousin. I don't know anybody else who can make this noise.
Yes.
And Carol performed the entire piece to my mother, every once in a while turning her head towards me and winking at me. It's like, woman, you need to be put in your place. And I mixed and mingled. I introduced Carol I introduced my mother to Kay Ballard and to Brett and the other people who were there. And I sat down, I brought her some food. And my mother turned to me and she said, "These people all know who you are. These people think you're talented." Now, I was like 38 years into my career. I'd gotten an Emmy. I've been nominated for a Grammy. And the only moment in all those years that she acknowledged I might actually be somebody, and it came and it went. She never referred to it again. But Carol did for me what I could not do for myself. She put her in her place.
That's great.
Thank you, Carol.
That's great. You know, Geoffrey, the truth of the matter is that you and I could sit and talk for hours and hours. We could do a mini series because there's so many layers to talk about. I'm thrilled that you said yes to doing the show tonight, and that we could sit and talk and just talk about whatever was on our minds. We are going to run out of time. You're going to sing a song for us. I had asked that you would perform. Before you get there, I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. I hope you all had a great time. You could be anywhere tonight. And if you chose to be with Geoffrey and myself, I can speak for Geoffrey as well. We both appreciate it. So thank you. If you enjoy these shows, please put your thoughts about the show in my guest book at richardskipper.com. That helps to boost me in other markets and get the word out about other shows. Tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, I'm going to be celebrating the one and only Natalie Douglas, who is one of my favorite cabaret entertainers. I just love her. I always end my shows by asking everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list, look at the 6th name that pops up, and reach out to them and order one of Geoffrey's books. They're all available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Go on, order a book, and send it to the 6th person who pops up on your list. Send them the celebrity of your favorite choice. Ella Fitzgerald. It could be Ethel Merman or Lucille Ball. Or you may even... Go ahead.
If you want it autographed, find me on Facebook, and we'll arrange something where I can sign it for you.
We'll make that happen and send that to your friend. I'm going to let you sing now, and then we'll say a few closing remarks. But everyone, this is Geoffrey Mark.
And I'm going to grab the microphone for this.
Save the screen so you've got the screen to yourself.
Thank you, my friend. This is a song written by another friend of mine, Paul Williams. It was written for a film. It never became a big hit, but I just love it. I think it's one of the best torch songs written the latter part of the 20th century. The orchestra is mine, meaning I produced this cut. I produced this recording I'm going to be singing to. And the trumpet solo is by my dear friend, the late Jack Sheldon. Was just a brilliant, brilliant jazz trumpetist. So the song is Ordinary Fool, written by Paul Williams. The trumpet is by Jack Sheldon. The hopefully good vocal is by me. And I need to find it on my little computer screen here and get it started. And there it is. Please to enjoy. Only Jack Sheldon makes that noise. Only a fool like fools before me. I always think with my heart. Only a fool, the same old story. Seems I was born for the part. The lessons that I've learned, the page I should have turned. I shouldn't cry, but I do. Like an ordinary fool when his ordinary dream falls through. How many times have I mistaken good looks and laughs for bad news? How many times have I mistaken love songs and laughs for the blues? When the road I walked before ends alone at my front door, I shouldn't cry, but I do, like an ordinary fool when his ordinary dream falls through. Tell him how I feel, Jack. Yeah. Don't tell him everything. How many times have I mistaken good looks and laughs for the blues? How many times have I mistaken love songs and laughs for bad news? When the road I've walked before ends alone at my front door, I shouldn't cry, but I do, like an ordinary fool when his ordinary dream falls through. Like an ordinary fool when his ordinary dream falls through. Ordinary dream falls through. Ordinary dream falls through.
Thank you so much, Geoffrey. I want to thank you for the gifts that you've given to the world and the gifts that you will continue to give to the world. I also want to turn the last word over to you. Anything you want to say to anyone who's watching, it can be about the times that we're living in, anything, your message, anything you want it to be, you've got the final word. And again, thank you.
I love you, Richard.
Thank you.
The final word is this. I'll put the mic down for it. The final word is this. Love is always the answer. If you're struggling, reach out to somebody who can help you. We're all going through it. All of us are struggling. So don't feel like you're a victim. We're all going through this together. Get out and vote for whomever you like, but get out and vote. And would you do something for me, please? Please wear a mask. Please quarantine if you can. Please stay in if you can. I'm the biggest people person in the world. If I can do it, you can do it. I'm counting on you now. Love everybody else, just like Richard Skipper, just like Geoffrey Mark, and the world will be a better place.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.